Welcome back. We're going to start on chapter 12. Chapter 12 is basics of diagnostic coding. Just recently, diagnosis changed from ICD-9 to ICD-10. Today, actually, I still have doctors that's putting old ICD-9 codes, but the positive side of that, when you're dealing with electronic health records, it automatically generated the correct ICD-10 code. So kudos to the electronic health records that help put that code in, because if you know the codes on top of your head, you have to go research the medical records diagnosis code. So some people think of Medicaid, Medicare, okay, it's an insurance that covers the elderly or the disability or underage kids, whatever your thoughts are. CMS covers billing and coding. So they assist with the change from ICD-9 to ICD-10. The purpose is to create useful, practical, code-to-code translation reference this dictionary for both code sets. So it can increase efficiency for ICD-10 codes. The complete list of GEMS is available on the CMS website. So I encourage you to go on www.cms.gov, and I will list that below the screen so you can write that down and you go through it and see what's new. If it's new to you, or if you're oldie but a goodie and want to just look at the transition of things, please go on to www.cms.gov. Alright, so for structure and format of the ICD-10 code, it has a tabular list and an alphabetic index. Each year, CMS reviews the ICD-10 coding manual and updates. I would like to encourage you to read chapter 12. Chapter 12 is a lot. Honestly, it is a lot of information. This video might be broken down to 2, but I still encourage you to read chapter 12 in your book. Please, please, please read chapter 12 and pay very close attention to every figure. The figures are the most important in here because they give you a breakdown of the format, the wrist, hand, the format of how to use diagnosis codes. Okay, so the history of medical diagnosis and codes began in the 17th century in England. In 1946, the International Commission of the World Health Organization, which is WHO, established the codes called Manual of International Statistic Classification of Disease, Injuries, and Causes of Death, ICD. So over time, it picked up numbers. It kept picking up numbers. And more now, they're changing them. Like, I just felt that we just got into ICD-9. So now we're in ICD-10. I'm like, what? Why so fast? But that makes the billing and coding stay on top of their game, because they know the codes can frequently change. And when the codes change, they send out post notes. And it tell you when the date is going to change. It tell you what it's changing from, what it's changing to, and the reason why. So keep that in mind. Along with, in this chapter, we're going to describe the transition from ICD-9 code to ICD-10. So to let you know that this book is a very new book because they have ICD-10 in it, along with explain how to use the alphabetic index to select main terms, essential modifiers, and appropriate codes and code ranges. So do the following related to the tabular list. Explain how to use the list. So I want you to read your book, chapter 12. Go through the sections with the tabular index. I want you to use the general equivalence, mapping, transitioning. Make notes of this. If you have to use an outline to make notes, please do so. My most important thing that I want to go over with you is the alphabetic index. Once you get down the alphabetic index on how to research and put for the illnesses, I think it may minimize some confusions. And sometimes it takes years to minimize your confusions. But we're going to jump right into this so we can get this over with. basics of diagnosis coding. With the basics of diagnosis coding, I want you to read over the history of medical coding because I want to get into more details of what matter. I don't want to spend too much time into explaining how it got started, when it got started, and who started it, because there's so much more about medical diagnosis coding. So, in the process of transitioning from ICD-9 to ICD-10, the GEMS, G-E-M-S, which is the General Equivalent Mapping, is the Centers for Medicaid Medicare Services, which is CMS, has developed code maps to assist in the changeover. So when you go into changeover, the CMS, which is the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, they try to help this become a bit easier. So is always on October 1st. CMS prepares the official guidelines for coding and reporting to use with the ICD-10 codes, in addition to instructions on how to report the codes to the insurance claims. The alphabetical index consists of an alphabetic list of diagnostic codes and related codes and includes the main term, the non-essential modifiers, the essential modifiers, and the subterms. So this help you. I kind of live by the alphabetical index. I don't know why, but it helps me. So we're going to turn to page 214. On page 214, it tells you, it gives you a breakdown on the figure 12-3. It gives you the main term, colitis. Under colitis, it tells you everything if due to radiation, food, hypersensitivity. So you get the bold word, colitis. Then it breaks it down to different terms underneath it in the alphabetic index, and it helps you break down to get the perfect ICD-10 code for that patient. If that doctor have not diagnosed that patient with something that you've put in, it can be a kickback for the insurance company stating that the ICD-10 code did not cover that patient. So please keep that in mind. So you can't really throw in anything. Everything has to matter, right? So on page 215, which is table 12-2, you're going to see a tabular list of diseases and insurance. On page 215, table 12-2, you're going to see a chart. It's a list of diseases and injuries. I want you to review that. And on that, it tells you the chapter, the title, the code range, possible diagnosis, and the ICD-10 code. So please read over that. Underneath that, it says the supplementary section for the alphabetic index. So when you're dealing with the supplementary, let me back up. So the tabular list is divided into 21 chapters. I know that's a big book. Yes, it is. That list is divided into 21 chapters. So on table 12-2, it explains to you exactly what it is, the diseases and injuries that it's divided into, and the terms. And when you get into the book, it tells you the ranges. So it's like it's breaking it down into more details within the chapters of 21. In that list, most of the chapter rules specify a particular group of diseases and injuries, and all titles are followed by a code range in parentheses. For example, chapter 1, certain infection and parasitic diseases. It has 800-B99. So it tells you exactly what and how far, how deep these codes can go. I think with chapter 12, I think it'll be more helpful for you to really break down into this book, read over it, and outline this chapter. This chapter can, because everybody understanding is different. I can only say so much as in person or over video, but until you read it and understand and then ask the questions that you're contemplating on or not quite understanding, then that would help this chapter go so much more, so much better. That's my personal opinion. So even after this chapter has been posted, please feel free to let me know how did you or what did not understand, so we can go into more details about this chapter. I truly believe if you read and you answer questions, or if you read and quiz yourself on it and you don't understand, so please feel free to read this chapter first, then you go and you get into more details and questions and concerns about what you don't understand. From being an instructor with dealing with medical assistant and billing and coding, this has always been the most difficult chapter for medical assistants, because it's so much information put into medical assistant. A lot of places this is separate from medical assistant, but until recently they have combined the two, because usually in the office their medical assistant and the coders are the same people. That's why this is in a book. I also feel that in this particular book it is in here a bit early, because it is a lot of information. I would like for you to be more mature into school to understand how important billing and coding is, for not just for you, but for you to diagnose, to put the correct terminology for your patient. So as I flip through, I would like for you to use the convention list of the tablet page, or table 12-2. I would like for you to use that and go on cms.gov to put those together. And I also would like for you to use procedure 12-2 to help yourself prepare for the actual ICD-10 manual. It's procedure 12-1. So with flipping through, you actually get to see the SIM chart on ICD-10 diagnosis and how it looked. Every facility may have different software. The eCoder software may be a tool that's commonly used for coding, coders to assist medical coding. Some people use a different symptoms and sign for coding book. Some people may use multiple coding information, but this is going into more detail for how to diagnose patients and what's the codes. I encourage you to read the HIV, which is the human immunodeficiency virus and infection, and acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, because these codes are very important when you're dealing with patients, because on the chart they have HIV, but you can also know the codes, that when you see the codes you know what type of patients you're dealing with. And not just HIV, hepatitis, diabetes, cancer. So yeah, so I'm flipping through the hypertensive diseases and neoplasms, because I want you to read that on your own. As for billing and coding for patient education, I'm going to read from the textbook for this portion, because I think patient education is always vital for a patient, for a medical assistant, because most patients know very little about medical coding. So they may not understand how the codes are on their encounter forms related to diagnosis. If the patient has questions, explain the codes, represent his or her diagnosis to the most specific and accurate level, because coding system is much like a foreign language to patients. Be patient when explaining this process and answering questions, so that the patient is able to understand the insurance billing process. So for legal and ethical issues, using medical coding system allows providers to express specifically complexity of medical treatment or procedure. This specifically leads to maximum reimbursement to the provider. So your provider will love that you know what you're doing for medical billing and coding. I would like for you to review or read the summary of learning and to do the study guide for chapter 12 along with the entry questions to help you understand. So while studying this chapter, think about the questions that's listed in the front of the question on the learning objectives. If you cannot answer question 1 through 13, please go back through the book and read question 1 through 13 so you can know how to review the medical coding for ethical standards. You should know how to summarize coding conversions as defined in the ICD-10 coding manual. And I'm unsure if you will receive an ICD-10 book, but that will be listed in the bottom of this video as well, to be expected a different book electronically. A lot may be electronic since you're online, which I think is a plus because you can always save it to a port and save the book. Usually text terms or like textbooks, we don't keep these for too long because you don't pick them back up unless you want to use them for a reference. So please understand that the figure 12-1 on page 213 and the page number may vary. It gives you the format for ICD-9 to ICD-10 codes. This includes my understanding that our least complex way. Please read and email or question anything in formal text or email for a better understanding. But the best way for billing and coding now would be for you to read and put what you read to the objective questions in the front. After that, please feel free to ask any questions or for me to redo a video with the questions that you all have to ask. Until next time, this is chapter 12 and it is the basis of diagnostic coding.